Do you like going outside? Yeah, me neither. But that's exactly what Fortnite tried to emulate when they released Season 6 of Chapter 2, Primal, where they attempted to show Fortnite players what being outside was really like. But players didn't really enjoy this season. It is generally regarded as one of the worst seasons in Fortnite history, even worse than Season X, which is a whole nother can of worms I do not care enough about to get into today. So, today, we're just going to be talking about Season 6. So join me as we travel back in time to figure out just what made Fortnite Season 6 of Chapter 2 the worst season ever. But before we can actually get into Season 6 itself, we need to look back at the previous season so we can understand what happened and how we got here. March 15th, 2021. The Zero Point is destabilizing and Agent Jones is looking into all information related to the Seven after the IO abandoned the Zero Point after it began to destabilize. So Jones takes things into his own hands and attempts to fix the Zero Point before it can destroy all existence. Jones makes a mad dash for the Zero Point and throws his portal gun into the Zero Point, which brings the Foundation to the island, and together they put their differences aside to attempt to fix the Zero Point. And that's where we come in. Jones attempts to close the portals that the Zero Point is spewing out, but gets turned into a butterfly, meaning we have to do all the heavy lifting. And after a pretty boring light show with little to no gameplay, the Foundation realizes he is unable to stop the Zero Point from imploding. You and Jones then rush to attempt to save him, climbing the spire that the Foundation erected in order to contain the blast. Eventually, you both reach the top and Jones is turned back to normal and attempts to help the Foundation. Jones is ordered to shove his portal gun into the Zero Point, which will allow it to be fully sealed, at the cost of Jones being trapped in the loop. Jones and the Foundation make a promise to find each other, and Jones overloads the device, which traps him in the loop and contains the Zero Point seconds before the singularity. And that takes us to the launch of Season 6, Fortnite version 16.0, and with every new season brought a ton of changes to the game, starting with map changes. The devs basically took a spray can and painted the entire center of the map orange. This new red grass was the Primal biome, which sent any location within it back to a prehistoric age, with buildings made of logs, bones, and cloth. Along with these changes, a new location was added in the direct center of the map, the Spire. The Spire was a large stone tower which contained the Zero Point, with a large market village surrounding its base. This location would be a hot drop in almost every game due to its record-shattering amount of chests at a total of 50 possible chest spawn locations, which blows Tilted Tower's record way out of the water at only 35 chests. The Spire also had a boss that spawned every game, the Spire Assassin, who when killed would drop the mythic Primal Shotgun, which is another issue we will discuss later. Around the island were also 6 smaller spires that spread out around the edges of the map, which further spread the reach of the Primal biome. Each spire had its own respective Spire Guardian who would attack on sight. Once defeated, the Guardians would drop this weird-ass rock called a runestone. You would then have to carry the runestone all the way back to the main spire and throw the runestone into these weird-ass holes in the spire. I don't know what they're actually called, and the official Fortnite wiki doesn't even list a name for them, but I always just refer to them as Spire Furnaces. After you throw the runestone into the furnace, it will spit out a brand new mythic item, the Spire Jump Boots. These boots would allow you to redeploy your glider after jumping 3 times. Every time you would jump, you would be sent slightly higher, until eventually you would jump insanely high and be able to redeploy your glider. These boots could have been a much more viable option if it was easier to obtain them. First, you had to land at a location with very few chests. Then you had to carry the runestone all the way back to the spire, and then having to find a furnace to throw it in. And even after all that, they weren't even that good. They took a slot up in your inventory for some reason, and would be super clunky in close quarters situations. You'd be jumping around to avoid getting shot, only to jump unusually high, which would affect your aim. I also don't understand why they take up a slot in your inventory. I know it's so that you can take them off, but they're still only on your feet. Why would your boots take up a slot in your inventory? But that's just my personal opinion. Probably the worst and most controversial feature added in this update was the makeshift weapons, and they were hated for 2 reasons. They replaced the majority of chests and floor loot you would find. Everywhere you went, you would most likely get a makeshift weapon. The makeshifts could be crafted into either primal weapons, which required animal parts, or mechanical weapons, which needed car parts. These were likely added in order to easily get the new primal weapons, but this came with a huge issue. The makeshift weapons sucked. They were not viable at all, and their damage was too low for them to ever be good. And if you even wanted to have regular weapons like the pump or the AR, you would first need to farm cars until you got the car parts in order to turn the makeshift weapons into mechanical weapons. This basically added an unnecessary step to obtaining the weapons you'd wanted to use. The only real exception to this issue was the makeshift bow. With the new update, bows and arrows were added, and with certain items could be crafted into bows with unique gimmicks. You could craft bows to shoot fire, stink bombs, or explosives. This feature worked fine, as bows were completely new and had exciting ways to use them. The new primal weapons were also rather disappointing. Of course, you first had to collect animal parts to then craft a makeshift weapon into a primal one. And once you did that, you would realize that the first shot accuracy on all the primal weapons were terrible. In fact, most, if not all of them, had absolutely no first shot accuracy. Their damage was also a little bit lower than all the other weapons in game, but they made up for both of these downsides with a much faster fire rate compared to any other weapon, which would be much better for close range fights. Boars, wolves, chickens, and frogs were also added alongside the primal weapons. They would all drop at least one piece of meat and either animal bones or stink sacks. The animal bones were used to craft the new primal weapons, and the stink sacks were used to craft the primal stink bow. Certain animals like wolves and boars could be tamed by holding down a tame button on them. They would then be able to fight for you. However, sometimes animals would need to be distracted before taming them. You could throw a piece of meat near them and wait for them to eat it, then tame them. Chickens were another one of the new animals added. If you were quick enough, you would be able to pick them up and hold them over your head to gain a slight increase in height when you jumped, as well as fall much slower. Frogs were the final and least useful animal added. They were extremely small and hard to hit due to their fast speed. They also only dropped one piece of meat and a couple stink sacks, which could only be used for one weapon. The Hunter's Cloak was also a new item added that could be crafted with meat and bones. The cloak would allow you to get close to animals easier by masking your scent. Hostile animals will not attack you, and smaller animals will not flee when you come near. The cloak really didn't have that much functionality, as it took a couple seconds to even use, and if you were to damage any animal or player, it would deactivate. However, it did make taming animals much easier. There were also these weird blue chests around the map known as bunker chests. They were only here for one season and functioned the same as the regular rare chest, except their spawn chance was greatly increased. Kinda weird, and I barely even remember this one. But then, there was one gun. One gun that you needed to have. And if you didn't have it, you were as good as gone. The Primal Shotgun. The Primal Shotgun could be crafted from a makeshift shotgun using animal parts, and it was the gun that ruled the meta for days. The mythic one that spawned at the Spire was the best weapon in the game at the time. It could turn someone's head into jelly in seconds. Each shot would fire 2 bullets at a time, with a very high fire rate between shots. For days, the Fortnite community would only talk about this gun. It was actually insane. I have no idea why they would ever decide to add this. And that wraps up update 16.0. Now on to 6. The Primal Shotgun was so good that by version 16.1 it was completely nerfed into the ground. Everything about it, the fire rate, spread, and damage had been severely reduced. And while it had mostly fixed the problem, the Spire Assassin's Mythic version still had some issues. A new piece of wildlife was also introduced, the Raptors. Possibly one of the most annoying things in all of Fortnite. These guys would chase you halfway around the world and would never leave you alone. But when you were able to tame them, they wouldn't give a shit about the enemy you were fighting and just did whatever the hell they wanted. Basically, they were just bigger and slightly more powerful wolves, but still pretty dumb. Not much was added in version 16.1, but there was a very quick content update about a week later which brought 16.1.1. It was almost Easter time, so an Easter event had begun with limited challenges and rewards. There were also hop eggs you could find around the map which would give you a low gravity effect similar to hop rocks. The egg launcher was also unvaulted, but that thing gets unvaulted like every year. It also received major nerfs, which made it not quite as viable as it was previously. But the really interesting thing that came in this update was the recycler. If you found one of these things, you could hold right click on just about any object and it would start to vacuum itself into the weapon, which it would then recycle into an explosive ball of garbage that could be fired. It was a cool weapon in theory, but in practice it wasn't very useful. Its explosive radius was incredibly small, requiring an almost direct hit to even damage the enemy, and when it did hit, it only did about 80 damage. Its vacuum attack also wasn't fast enough to be able to take people's builds. It would take multiple seconds to destroy a wooden wall and would be very loud and obvious, which means using a pickaxe would just be more viable. So, 2 new weapons and new wildlife, all of which were not all that useful, and this will be a trend you will notice a lot with the new features added this season. Another large change that was made in this update was the changes to the storm. When you were caught in the storm, it would be almost impossible to see. For some reason, Epic decided to turn the fog way up in the storm, making fights way more annoying to get in whenever you were inside the storm. Several barricades were also set up around some of the urban named locations. Everyone assumed that the residents were preparing for something, teasing that the primal biome may expand, but this would later prove to have no significance whatsoever. Update 16.2 brought the Chonkers off-road tires to the game, the first vehicle mod to ever be released in Fortnite. These big wheels could be thrown onto any car or truck, which would allow it to travel off-road much more easily. Along with the tires came expansions to almost all of the gas stations around the map. Each gas station also came with a large garage where you could farm tire racks to get the off-road tires. Unlike pretty much everything else that had been added this season, the off-road tires were a very useful and fun item to use, and it made travel around the map much more easier and fun. The Primal Shotgun had also received another slight nerf in this update. Not nearly as large as the previous, but still. The Spire Assassin's Mythic Primal Shotgun was also completely removed and replaced with a Mythic Recycler. The Mythic Recycler didn't really fix any of the problems with the regular version, it just had a slight increase in damage. But this change actually caused a lot of players to stop landing at the Spire, since the main draw was the Mythic, and now that it sucked, they started landing elsewhere. The Grappler Bow was the third new item to come with this update, but I'm not really sure even half the players knew it existed. You could only get it from Lara Croft at Stealthy Stronghold, and since it was an exotic, it came with a pretty hefty price tag. However, the bow actually worked pretty well. You could use it as a regular grappler, except it had a much longer range and way faster reload time. If you hit an enemy with it, you could damage them and then fling yourself towards them, making for an easy kill. Version 16.3 brought yet another change to the Spire and its bosses. The Spire Assassin had been totally removed, along with her Recycler. Instead, we have Glyphmaster Raz, who holds Raz's mythic explosive bow. Raz is unique in that he is one of only a handful of bosses that has more than one attack that they can use on you. If you are too close to him for too long, he will reach in his pocket and pull out a shard of a cube, which creates a small area around him that will damage you if you stay near him. However, the area of effect is very small for this attack, and you can easily avoid it with little issue. Whenever he does this attack, he also becomes a big target to get massive amounts of damage in. Defeating Raz was also the final objective in the storyline quest for this season. Since defeating Raz was part of the challenges, over half the lobby would be landing at the Spire every game, making surviving in the Spire almost impossible. The Batman comics were also going on around this time, and this update added a small hut for Batman to reside in located outside of Slurpy Swamp. This won't have any real significance, but it was a cool Easter egg and a nod to the comics. But probably the best thing about this update released a few days after it launched. A new LTM was created called the Impossible Escape, a PvE or a PvP game mode where you had to repair a helicopter in order to escape the island. You'd wake up on the coast of the island, with the map totally undiscovered. You could hold very little materials, and chests didn't spawn as frequently, and there were 4 chopper parts you needed to collect in order to escape. Wildlife spawn rates and damage is greatly increased in this mode in order to balance out the difficulty in modes where every player is your ally. Whenever night would fall, shadows would emerge and attack you, making it very difficult to survive. This game mode was just so much fun, and I really wish they enabled this more often. Everything about it, the intro cutscene, the part collecting, it feels like there's actual stakes for the things you do. It's just cool. A small cloudy island also started to emerge from the ocean floor south of Flush Factory, but it's probably nothing to worry about. It's probably not going to turn into...
I don't know what I'm doing!
A new island decided to just randomly emerge out of the ocean, with ruins of a castle on top of it. Inside these ruins are the female counterpart to Oro, the much more attractive Aurelia. Aurelia guards a golden scar on top of a pedestal. You can either pay a tribute of 750 gold, or just take it, which would anger her. You can't actually buy anything from Aurelia, and there aren't many chests that will spawn here, but the 100% scar spawn is cool, and there's a guaranteed rift there as well. The island is also called Isla Nublada, which is Spanish for the cloudy island. No hablo español muy bien, pero me gusta esta mujer. Se llama Es Rustler. Ella es muy atractiva y bonita. Me encantan sus botas y su sombrero. pero no si se le gusta yo devuelto. But anyways, that's about it for this update. Definitely not much, but hopefully version 16.5 will be better. In this update, basically nothing new was added during day 1, but as the days went by, more and more alien propaganda was being set up. Posters welcoming aliens and saying that they were friends were set up all around Sweaty Sands and other locations. All of the corn was harvested, and crop circles began appearing at colossal crops as well, teasing multiple different symbols and shapes. Recreations of these crop circles were also appeared in certain real-world fields. Players also began getting abducted by invisible spacecrafts. The beams would pull them up and quickly spawn them somewhere else not too far away from where they were first taken, while also gaining 100 shields for their time. How nice. Static-filled TVs also began appearing around the edges of the island. Later, these would be used for challenges to earn some extra lore about the next season. A conspiracy theorist was trying to uncover the mystery of the aliens and broadcasting her show through these TVs and radios, while the IO attempts to remove any information about the possibility of an alien invasion. But that's pretty much everything that happened until Season 7. Season 6 of Chapter 2 may have had many issues, controversies, and overall lack of useful or fun features, but I personally didn't dislike it that much. The community, however, does not share my same opinion. A large number of players say that this season was likely the worst season of Fortnite, even worse than Season X, and while it may be hard to top Season X, and maybe even Season X is the worst season ever, the Primal season is still pretty high up on the worst seasons list. Some cool features were added like the off-road tires and wildlife, which have improved over the years, and some not so useful features like the recycler or raptors, but Season 6 also added bows, which are some of my favorite weapons to use. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Season 6. Also, make sure to use code BOW in the item shop whenever you buy anything in the Fortnite item shop. Like and subscribe and stuff and all that. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I will see you when I see you.